Lecture 13, Monopoly. Moving on from our perfectly competitive market, we go on to the other extreme. In a perfectly competitive structure, we had many buyers and sellers producing exactly the same product. In a monopoly, a seller producing a product without any close substitutes. So by that definition, we know that products sold by monopolists tend to be very inelastic. Now, unlike perfectly competitive firms, a monopoly tends to have market power, which means it has the ability to set the market price. It also faces a downward sloping demand curve, which is effectively how it gets the ability to set a price based on profit maximization. Recall, in the perfectly competitive market, the firm was only able to set the quantity or the output. So as we work through this lecture, think about the following questions. First, what prevents a monopoly from charging an infinite price? What is similar about a model of monopoly compared to perfect competition? And what is different about the model of monopoly compared to a perfect competition? Why do monopolies arise? Well, the main cause of monopolies is barriers to entry, which prevents other firms from entering. Let's look at the first is exclusive power over inputs. So an example of this type of monopoly is De Beers diamonds. In practice, monopolies rarely arise due to control over natural resources. So in this case, basically you're saying if a firm controls the inputs into the market, which means it owns all of the inputs in the production process, then it becomes a monopolist in terms of outputs. The second type is intellectual property protection. These are typically given by the government. They include patents and copyrights. Some examples of these types of monopolies that we'll look at later on would be prescription drugs and textbooks. The third is a government monopoly. So this is a monopoly created by the government for a specific use. And one of the examples we can look at in this case is the U.S. Postal Service. The fourth, network effects. This is the use of a product by other people can increase its value to any one person. So here, although Microsoft is not a monopoly, we can think of Microsoft Excel products as almost a universal product. And as more and more companies and individuals use Microsoft Excel, the more value that it gains, where other programs may not be as sufficient, and this does tend to deter any individual's desire to create a program to compete with Microsoft Excel. The fifth is economies of scale. This is the characteristic of production in which an increase in the scale of the firm, so increasing the size, will decrease the longer and average cost of each unit. A natural monopoly is a special case of economies of scale, where basically the average costs in the long run are always in the process of economies of scale, which means no matter how much you expand, you still get falling average total costs over the lifetime of the firm. Examples of these would be typical monopolies created by the government, like utilities. The gas company, LADWP, Edison, PG&E, and other utilities.
You've made me the happiest man in the world. Emily, will you marry me?
How sweet. You like it, so you're putting a ring on it. But have you ever wondered why we put diamond rings on things we like at all?
Oh God, you're gonna tell us the awful truth about engagement rings, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Hi, I'm Adam Conover.
Hey, Adam.
And you may think of the diamond engagement ring as a timeless symbol of love, but it turns out this ancient tradition was invented less than a century ago by the De Beers Diamond Corporation. Before the 1930s, nobody exchanged diamond rings when they got engaged. It wasn't a thing.
Ethel, what do you say we get married?
Oh, that's a swell idea, Frank. What do you give me?
Well, I got the shiny red apple.
Sold. Oh, I love you, Frank.
But in 1938, the De Beers Diamond Cartel launched a massive ad campaign, claiming that the only way for a real man to show his love is with an expensive hunk of crystallized carbon. And we bought that shit.
Now, hold on. Looks like if I don't buy you one of these ring dealies, then I'm a tiny peck-pencil neck.
Well, it's on the side of a building, so it's gotta be true.
Well, crumbs.
In fact, every element of the traditional American engagement was designed to make more money for De Beers. How much you drop on that rock?
I don't know, like $4,000.
Jesus Louises, that's more than your car.
My dad said the rule was 2 months' salary.
Yeah, sorry, dude. That's not a rule. That's just an arbitrary number from an old De Beers ad campaign.
Buy her a diamond worth 1 month's salary. She'll be sure to love you eternally.
Profits are down. Better make it 2 months.
This has gotta be the most successful ad campaign of all time. This is like if in 50 years people were going,
Oh, honey, the same thing again?
Yeah, you know that old rule. Pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza at supper time. When pizza's on a bagel, you must eat pizza all the time.
Well, it's not like I'm throwing my money away. I mean, at least the ring is worth something.
Yeah.
actually, diamonds are intrinsically worthless.
I refuse to believe that.
Well, maybe you believe De Beers chairman Nicky Oppenheimer, who once said, quote, diamonds are intrinsically worthless.
Shut up, shut up, shut up.
In fact, they're quite common. The only reason diamonds are even expensive is that De Beers has a global monopoly on diamond mining, and they artificially restrict the supply to jack the prices up. But in reality, those assholes have a fuck ton of them.
These are extremely rare. Pay no attention to that.
Which means that diamond you just blew your savings on has virtually no resale value. That's why De Beers wants you to think a diamond is forever. If you never try to sell it, you'll never figure out how badly you got fucked.
Fine, so what do we do about it?
Nothing. They've got us by the balls. A century of advertising has embedded the idea of a diamond engagement ring so deeply in our culture that even knowing all that doesn't get you out of buying an engagement ring. Seriously, give it a shot.
Okay. Emily, will you marry me? I'm not giving you a ring because the concept of an engagement ring is a scam on the part of the De Beers Corporation. But we could open a joint checking account?
Sorry, dude. I want that rock.
Fuck! Well, thanks, man.
No problem. Join me next time on Adam Ruins Life's Greatest Pleasures when I'll be talking about how puppies only pretend to love you in order to mooch off your food supply.
Who hurt you?
Hey there, if you like that video, click to subscribe.
Where are you going? These are
It's a scam, man. Come
I know,
on.
they're fake. Why are you taking them?
I thought we were still in the video.
No, it's done. It's over. Just please click. Hope you liked it. Where are you going? Don't, please. Don't.
Monopoly versus competition. First, let's look at the demand curves. In a competitive market, the demand curve slopes downward, right? But the demand curve for any individual firm product is horizontal at the market price, meaning that the firm can increase Q without lowering price, so the marginal revenue equals the price in a competitive firm, right? Only in a competitive firm. In the case of a monopoly, a monopolist is the only seller, so it faces the market demand. To sell a larger Q, the firm must reduce its price. It's following the law of demand. Thus, the marginal revenue is actually not equal to the price. So, a monopoly's revenue, let's set this up. Common Grounds is the only seller of cappuccinos in a town. The table shows the market demand. So this is price and quantity. We can easily graph this on a demand curve, right? So you have when Q is 0, price is $4.50, etc. You have a downward sloping demand curve, as you can see evidenced here. To get the total revenue, we just multiply each price times each quantity to generate total revenue. And average revenue is just the total revenue divided by the number of units sold, which is Q. Let's see what is the relationship between price and average revenue, and the relationship between price and margin. Here we have the set of components to develop a demand curve for a monopoly. We have a series of prices that you can see clearly follow the law of demand. As the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. To calculate total revenue, we just do the price times quantity. So let's fill in that column here. And so we notice that the total revenue curve initially is at 0, increases up to the point of price of $2.50 and $2, maximizes there, and then starts to decrease. If you recall from our previous lecture in elasticity, the maximum revenue a firm earns is basically at the midpoint of the demand curve, or when demand is at its midpoint. Now let's find the average revenue. Remember, average revenue is the total revenue divided by the number of units sold Q. Notice this is exactly identical to the price. Just like before, price is equal to average revenue. What about marginal revenue and price? So the marginal revenue, remember, is the change in total revenue, right? So the additional revenue per unit that we gain, right, divided by change in Q. So in this case, in our first case, when we go from $4.50 to $4, the total revenue increases from $0 to $4, and the change in output is 1 unit. So marginal revenue is $4. And here is our series of marginal revenue. So notice marginal revenue becomes 0 exactly where total revenue is maximized. And that's an important feature. Let's see this graphically. So here we have our demand curve graphed out. This is, you can see it's a graph paper and our demand curve is graphed out there. And if we plot out marginal revenue, notice it's right at the in-betweens of each of those quantity values. And so notice our marginal revenue is basically is at 0 right between $2.50 and $2. Okay, and that's if we had a total revenue curve under this, that would effectively be the peak of our total revenue. Now, it's because of this relationship that the monopolist is able to charge basically any price that they choose. But of course, the price that they're going to choose is where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Profit maximization. Like a competitive firm, a monopolist maximizes profit by producing the quantity where MR equals MC. Once the monopolist identifies this quantity, it sets the highest price consumers are willing to pay for that. Let's look at the profit maximizing point. So here we just have our downward sloping marginal revenue and demand curves and our upward sloping marginal cost curve. First, we identify the point where marginal revenue and marginal cost are equal, MR equals MC. This gives us the profit maximizing level of output. Now, in order to find the price, we have to go up to the demand curve because remember that this is giving us our average revenue and or price. And so the monopoly price is going to be where at the quantity where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Okay, so there's our price. So notice what we're going to see in the case of a monopoly is that the amount of goods that are produced, this Q, is actually less than the socially efficient level of output, and therefore a monopolist will actually see a deadweight loss. So there's efficiency loss due to monopoly that we do not see when price equals marginal cost in the case of perfectly competitive markets. Let's measure the profit. So where we left off before was finding the price, the profit maximizing price and quantity for a monopolist. And remember that to find the profit, we just take the price minus the average total cost at the profit maximizing level of output and multiply that by Q. So in this case, this is what we have as our monopolist's profit. Now, a monopolist, in fact, does not operate unless they have positive profits. So comparing again the monopoly to perfect competition, a competitive firm takes prices given and has a supply curve that shows how it depends Q on price. However, a monopolist is a price maker. Quantity does not depend on price. Quantity and price are jointly determined by MC and MR and the demand curve. Hence, there is no supply curve for a monopoly, as it is the sole producer in the market. If we think about our welfare cost, which we hinted on just a little bit earlier, in a competitive market, price is MC and total surplus is maximized. In a monopoly equilibrium, price is greater than marginal revenue, and marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So that means the value of buyers of an additional unit exceeds the cost of resources needed to produce the unit. The monopoly is too low. This could increase total could increase total surplus with the larger Q, thus the monopoly in deadweight loss. Right? You could see here this MC being less than the price, or P being greater than MC. This is the markup due to the monopoly. And therefore, we have less than optimal being produced in this market and a resulting deadweight loss. What if a firm doesn't have to charge everyone the same price? Let's look at an example. A firm pays an author $2 million for the right to publish a book. Assume that the cost of printing of the book is zero. We're just making it simple. We just have a total cost of $2 million. The firm knows there's two types of readers, 100,000 diehard fans that will pay $30 for the book, and there's 400,000 other readers who are willing to pay $5. How much should the firm price? Well, the answer is simple. If they're going to charge everybody the same price, and let's say they charge $30, well, if they charge $30, they're only going to sell 100,000 books. So 30 times 100,000, we get about $3 million. And if we subtract the $2 million in costs, the firm will make $1 million. If we charge everyone $5, we'll have the 400,000 other readers plus the 100,000 diehard fans. So we'll be selling in the area of 500,000 books times the $5 each. And our sales in this case would be 2.5 million, leaving us with a profit of only $500,000. Now, if our only option was to set one price, we would set the price at $30, sell it to 100,000 people, and earn our $1 million in profit. However, what if we could charge each of them their own price? Charge the diehard fans the $30, earn your $3 million there, and charge the 400,000 other readers their $5 and make $2 million there, for a grand total of $5 million minus the 2, and make a profit of $3 million as a result, simply by charging your customers different prices. Now, is this done in the book market? Yes, in fact it is. Books are distinguished, first of all, at early release. They tend to have higher prices when they're just released. Also, books tend to be released on hard copy initially, and therefore are charged higher prices in order to take advantage of the diehard fan. And later, 6 months to a year afterward, they're released in paperback to take advantage of all the other readers. So if we price discriminate, which is charge different customers different prices, we actually can increase our profits and, as we'll see later on, actually increase welfare to society to some extent as well. Some price discrimination in the real world. Here's a few set of examples of price discrimination in the real world. First, let's start off with coupons. Coupons are used in retail as a way to distinguish customers by their reserve price, which is their maximum willingness to pay. The assumption is that individuals who collect coupons are more sensitive or more elastic to the price than those who don't. So by offering coupons, a producer can charge a higher price to the price insensitive or the inelastic customers and provide a discount to the elastic customers. Premium pricing. Premium products are priced at a level that is well beyond their marginal cost. For example, a regular cup of coffee may be $1, while the premium coffee may be $2.50. Who knows if they're actually different products, but in fact that is a possibility. Discounts based on occupation. Many businesses offer reduced prices for active military. This can increase sales to a target group. There can be less publicized discounts are also offered to off-duty service workers such as police, etc. Retail incentives. Retail incentives are used to increase market share revenue. They include rebates, bulk and quantity pricing, and seasonal discounts. Gender-based discounts. Examples include free drinks at bars for ladies' night. Men often receive lower prices at dry cleaners and hair salons than women because women's goods, clothes, and hair generally take more time with. In contrast, men usually have higher car insurance rates than women based on the likelihood of being in an accident based on their age. Financial aid. Financial aid is offered to college students based on either the student and or parent's economic situation. And then, of course, there's haggling. This is a form of price negotiation that requires knowledge and confidence from the customer. Let's look at a few other examples. Airlines and time of purchase. The airline industry uses price discrimination regularly when they sell travel tickets simultaneously to different market segments. Price discrimination is evident within individual airlines, but also in the industry as a whole. Tickets vary based on location within the plane, the time of day, the flight, the time of year, and what city the aircraft is traveling. And they can vary greatly from airlines and among airlines. Customers must search the best price tickets based on their needs. And also airlines offer price discrimination discounts for members with membership credit cards and so on. Pharmaceuticals. Again, an industry that operates not in full monopoly, but in a monopolistic way. They experience international price discrimination. Drug manufacturers charge more for drugs in wealthier countries than in poor countries. For example, the US has the highest drug prices in the world. On average, Europeans pay 56% less than Americans do for the same medications. Textbooks. Textbooks in the US are more expensive than they are overseas. Because most textbooks are published in the US, it is obvious that transportation costs do not raise the price of the book. In the US, price discrimination on textbooks is due to copyright protection laws. Also in the US, textbooks are mandatory, whereas in other countries they are viewed as optional study aids. Let's have a look at some coupons. Again, as we discussed before, coupons are used to distinguish between elastic and inelastic customers. So they reward people that have more sensitivity to price. Here's a few examples. Buy one, get one free, right? Buy one, take one to go, etc. These are famous deals throughout the restaurant industry. Age discounts. Age discounts, again, are another form of price discrimination where a good or admission to an event is based on age. Age discounts are broken down by child, student, adult, senior. In some cases, children under a certain age are given free admission to eat or they eat for free. Examples of where discounts are given: restaurants, movies, and other forms of entertainment. And why is that? Why is there senior discounts? Well, because seniors live on a fixed income and therefore have less disposable income to spend on entertainment. And to induce them to come out and spend money, entertainment venues tend to allow for lower prices for senior citizens. How do we categorize these types of price discrimination? Well, we categorize them into three broad categories. First degree price discrimination, which is charging each customer the maximum price they are willing to pay. Second degree price discrimination, charging different prices depending on the quantity consumed. So this is like a bulk discount type of idea. And finally, third degree price discrimination. This is charging different prices depending on a particular market segment: age, profile, income group, or time of use. Third degree price discrimination is the most common type in the market. What are the conditions necessary for price discrimination to work? Well, the first is that the firm must have market power. You cannot be a perfectly competitive firm and price discriminate, as you charge the same price for everyone. The firm must be able to separate the market. So you have to easily divide between different consumers and easily identify whether they're elastic or inelastic consumers of the good. The buyers in the market or submarket must have different elasticities. Also, they should be identifiable to a firm at a reasonable cost. You have to know that one person is more elastic than the other very, very quickly in order to price discriminate. And the fourth is that the firm must be able to prevent resale of the good or service. So what you don't want is the elastic customer coming in, buying the product at the lower price, and then selling it back into the marketplace. The goal of first-degree price discrimination is pure surplus extraction. So this is a method of fully extracting the entire consumer surplus. So in this case, what you're going to try to do is you're trying to charge each customer their maximum willingness to pay for the good, thereby completely erase consumer surplus. The problem is that managers really know each consumer's maximum willingness to pay for each unit. So first-degree price discrimination. If, say, the price of the product is $4 and someone's willing to pay 10, for example, you'd have to have a way to basically have that specific individual pay 10, the next one pay 9, 8, 7, 6, as up to the $4 point. Each person must be judged independently and charge the price they're willing to pay. So if this is successful, the monopolist will basically be able to extract all of the consumer surplus. Now notice one thing that is interesting. Typically in a monopoly, we do end up with a deadweight loss. But when we actually charge prices based on discrimination, first-degree price discrimination, we actually eliminate the deadweight loss and basically expand the total surplus to the level it was in terms of perfect competition, except there's no consumer surplus. It's all surplus going to the producer. Second-degree price discrimination. The price of a good or service varies depending on quantity demanded. So large quantities are available at lower prices. So higher discounts are given to consumers who buy goods in bulk. Again, in this case, the firm will extract some of the consumer surplus without needing to identify the various consumers' demands. So they don't need to know your maximum willingness to pay. They just need to know that if we offer you lower prices for a lot of units, then you're willing to pay them. Third degree, the most common price discrimination. This is also called group pricing. This term describes a seller that charges different prices depending on a particular market segment, such as age, profile, income group, or time of use. This kind of categorization is legal except in certain circumstances, including racial and religious discrimination. For example, many stores sell their own credit cards, which offer consumers special discounts and rewards. Others include amusement parks, theater tickets, right? This form of discrimination helps to lower consumer surplus by adapting to various consumer groups, particularly price elasticity of demand. The next video will actually look at an example of third-degree price discrimination and answer the question, why does Disneyland offer special discounts to Southern California residents, but it does not do so for tourists? This is an example of third-degree price discrimination. So our question at hand, why does Disneyland offer special discounts for Southern California residents but not for tourists? Well, it's all in the elasticities of the demand curves. So let's set this up. Let's set up two demand curves or two market structures. So we'll have tourists on one side, so people visiting California temporarily, and then we'll have California residents. And this is, of course, for Disneyland. We'll label our axes just like usual. Okay, and what we'll make an assumption is that the marginal cost of each individual visiting Disneyland is the same. So we'll just have a perfectly elastic marginal cost curve. So this is MC. And this is a valid assessment, as for Disneyland, the additional cost per customer, we can assume that it's going to be relatively the same. So let's add in our demand curves. Now, if you're a tourist visiting Disneyland, you're likely coming from a far distance, and therefore, when you come to Disneyland, the price that you're willing to pay, right, can be higher than someone that is a resident, and therefore you may have very inelastic demand because this is your shot. You're here to go to Disneyland. The price, in fact, has very little impact, right? And the marginal revenue curve, of course, cuts the price in the demand curve in half, and you have your MR there. Now remember that the price set in this market is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And then we go up to the demand curve to see our monopoly price. So this would be the price and quantity of tourists that will be going to Disneyland. Now let's look at residents. Now residents live nearby. They're Southern California residents, so they can go to Disneyland whenever. So to entice them to come to the park, right, knowing that they have an elastic demand, so this is residents, here's their marginal revenue. Again, let's find our MC equals MR, go up to the price. And this is our monopoly price for our residents. And this is the amount of residents that'll visit. Now notice what's happening here is that the market price for tourists is actually greater than the monopoly price for residents. And why is that? Well, we know residents tend to be more elastic. Now this only occurs if the firm is allowed to charge all individuals a different price. Now notice as a result of this, you'll have some deadweight loss in both of these markets, right? But overall deadweight loss will actually be reduced, because if you were to charge everyone the same price, you may have a lot fewer residents of California visiting Disneyland. So for example, if we just said everyone will be charged the tourist's price, so if we just do our MC, here's our MR and our demand for our tourists, right? And we can throw in our demand curve for residents as well. We'll just make a very flat demand curve. So this is for residents, and MR equals MC here. If this is going to be the profit max for the tourists, both parties are going to be charged that. So you're only going to have QM number of visitors. You're going to miss out on quite a few of these additional components that would visit if the price was lower. So third degree price discrimination allows organizations to discriminate based on identifiable factors that are easy to differentiate between customers in terms of their demand elasticity. Again, this applies to air travel, where you're looking at business versus leisure travelers. This can apply to coupons. This can apply to age discounts. Back in week 2 of our adventure, we started to look at what creates the market demand and supply. And we mentioned that there's 4 types of market structures. In this lesson, or in our course, we've only been covering monopoly and perfect competition. There are 2 more in between, or what we call imperfectly competitive market types, which is oligopoly and monopolistic competition. Just to compare them to monopoly and perfect competition. In terms of producers, remember in monopoly, we have 1. In perfect competition, many producers. Oligopoly, we have a few. In monopolistic competition, we have many. So basically, perfect competition has the most number of producers. Kinds of competition, in terms of perfect competition, our competition is based on price. Monopolistic competition mostly is non-price, but also some price competition. Now, typically what we mean by non-price would include things like advertising or brand name competition. Oligopoly, most competition tends to be non-price competition. And in monopoly, there is no competition. Now, the barriers to entry. Monopoly, it's not possible to enter. Also, it is illegal to become a monopoly other than the government mandates. Oligopoly, medium barriers, difficult entry. In monopolistic competition, low barriers. And perfect competition is free entry and exit, no barriers to entry. And that's what generates the difference between the short run and the long run. So in terms of the firms, the monopolist is a price setter or creator. Oligopoly, the pricing situation it's an interdependence between all of the firms in the oligopoly, where they strictly move back and forth depending on the behavior of the other and adjust their prices. But they do have leadership models where some will be more price maker than other. Monopolistic competition, they face a downward sloping demand curve, similar to a monopoly, except not as inelastic. And perfectly competitive are price takers. Based on their special traits, in terms of a monopoly, there's 1 firm. Oligopoly, firms can collude and behave as a monopolist. Monopolistic competition, the key is product differentiation and branding. And perfect competition, the special trait is that it has a perfectly elastic demand curve for the firm. So in this lecture, we covered monopoly characteristics, profit maximization in a monopoly, and price discrimination that is possible for a monopolist, etc.